Hey there friends, how's it going? My name's Popeye, and today I got for you some more Umineko. Before we dive into this, I'm guessing the caption said something weird, Samus's. I'm gonna give a couple trigger warnings for this game, like right from the summary. It's gonna be some big trigger warnings there. So, this game features, but is not limited to, death, murder, blood, gore, very vivid descriptions of torture and dismemberment, child abuse, and any of the above against a minor. With that said, last time, I'll get you that hydrate before I forget Samus's. There you go. We got water today, and we got Smash Single Hop Pale Ale. If it'll show its face. There we go. And that is our two drinks. So hydrate will always be water, but otherwise, I've got this. But yeah, last time, actually my camera's a little high as well. It's oh, because you are leaning. Haha. There we go. That's much better. So last time, we as the kids woke up. It was the next morning, and actually Maria woke us up because she couldn't find her mom. Maria fell asleep with us in the cousin's room, went to go find her mom in the morning, couldn't find her, came back to wake all us up to voice her displeasure at being unable to find her mom. And so we were like, they're probably just, at the main house, maybe they're still there, fighting, arguing, divvying up the inheritance. Or maybe they're, they went to bed and they're up early because there'll be breakfast soon and, they're hungry. So, we make our way over. And then we cut to the servant's view. And we see, obviously, the servants need to be up earlier than the guests. And we discover that the chef, whose name I can't recall, so I'll pull up the handy-dandy character list. Oh, that kind of will be a very handy guide for what's about to happen next. So, Goda, that's his name. And actually I'm going to cut off him, because we're going to go through all that information. Yeah, Samus's, you left at the end of last stream. I think I only went for like another half hour. You left, and maybe like 2 minutes later, as you can see from all this red, we've got some murder afoot. So they go to the kitchen where Goda's supposed to have already started on breakfast. This is Canon, by the way. Canon and Genji. They go, see that Goda's not there. They search, thinking, maybe he overslept, or maybe he's off with some of the adults, and maybe they went out and had like a breakfast on the beach kind of deal, and maybe they had him come along with them. So Genji goes and notifies Natsuhi that, oh yeah, and the thunderstorm also took out the phone lines. So, no phone line. We do find out that they have a sat radio for emergencies, which they do use to call the mainland to get an electrician to come, but because of the storm, they won't be able to come until after the storm passes, which is supposed to be another day or two. And then Natsuhi hears from Goda that, yeah, people are missing. She orders Canon and what was his name, Goda? Genji, to do a full sweep, and they don't find anything at first. The only things of note kind of inside the mansion is one. Mansion was locked, so either someone went out and then back in, or had the key and locked it. Although it's unclear how many keys there are. We know Genji has one of the keys to the house. That much is clear, because he and Canon stayed in the guest house in case any of the guests there needed any assistance. But then they made their way over in the morning. But Genji does notice on Natsuhi's bedroom door, when he goes to let her know of the disappearances as well as the phone line being down, that there is something that looks like blood on her doorknob. And they think it's someone playing a prank, and they rush off, and Genji just says he'll clean up later. So at this point, Genji and Canon are now looking around outside, trying to see if they did have a picnic somewhere to bring everyone inside. While they're inside, Eva is chastising Natsuhi to have grandfather come and join them for breakfast. Genji gives Natsuhi the key that he has to grandfather's office where he's cooped up because he trusts Genji. But Natsuhi wants to go check just to make sure that her husband and maybe the adults aren't in grandfather's room having the discussion to him. She very much doubts it, but she feels she is duty stricken to go and do so. So she does, and Kinzo actually gives her a very nice compliment, saying that even though she is not one of his children, not a direct member of the family, he basically gives her a compliment saying, you, Natsuhi, are a better fit for this family, at least than her husband, if not more than any of his kids. But he still won't come out to breakfast. So Natsuhi leaves, but she is feeling much better. She's feeling justified that all her hard work is finally being seen, because she gave up her family, which it sounds like she also came from a pretty prestigious family. And from this, it sounds like she doesn't even talk to her family. She treats them as if, they're dead to her. Not that I think she hates her family, but she's kind of, going all in on her husband's family. All right, so she comes back, and at this point, Canon and Genji come back, and Canon says, tries to come in being discreet, and says to Genji, hey, I found something that's suspicious. It's the rose garden shed, so the shed by the rose garden for all the tools and fertilizer and whatever else you need to grow roses. And so Genji gets the key, and Canon, Genji, Nanjo, I believe Natsuhi, and Eva, and Hideyoshi all head out. And the kids all come in, and they kind of catch the tail end of them running out. And so Maria, who's watching kids' cartoons at this point, just stays there. But Battler, George, and Jessica decide to all head out and kind of see what's up. When they get there, they see... Well, this is now back to the adults. They get there first. They see on the shed, and it's got one of those roll-up shutters. You might have seen it if you're in the mall or something, and they close the store, or kind of in a strip mall where they just have a bunch of shops, and sometimes they'll roll down the shutters just so people can't break windows or try to break through a door as easily. So they've got that is the door to the shed, and it's got a big demonic emblem written in what appears to be blood on it. They're like, yeah, this looks pretty suspicious. Let's go inside. And then we cut to the grandkids, minus Maria, who, probably a good thing she's watching cartoons, come down to the shed as well. And when they get there, they kind of see like this big pool of blood inside, and the adults at this point are like, don't go inside. So Nanjo's inside because he's a doctor, so he's looking at all the bodies. But Eva and Natsuhi, respectively, Natsuhi essentially grabs and holds on to Jessica like, no, you can't go in there. Eva does the same thing for George. But since Hideyoshi and Nanjo, as well as the servants, are inside, there's no one really there to stop Battler. Who goes in, and this is your final trigger warning. If all of this wasn't bad enough, this next part is kind of what you're in for if you keep watching this kind of stuff. So, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bodies inside. And on top of them being dead, their faces have been torn apart, but only on one side. So think of it like Phantom of the Opera, or, something like that, where just one side of their face is ripped up, is to the bone, bloody, all of that. And they're kind of lying in a big heap inside of this. Battler sees this and breaks down. Jessica and George at this point know what's there. They can tell from what they've seen, what they've inferred, and what kind of the adults are saying. They can infer what's going on. However, they opt not to look inside. George does try to, because he asks, they're trying to figure out who's there. So, I guess we can go through them since they actually updated this, so this is really nice. So we have Kraus. So the left side of his face is smashed in. We have Rudolph. His entire face smashed in. Kyrie, same thing, head smashed in. Rosa, head smashed in. I don't know this. I'll be seeing her again, so I'm not. Maybe that's Maria talking. Maybe that's Maria talking. We have Goda, same thing, head smashed in. And at this point, George asks Nanjo and Cannon, who are inside, is Shion there? And they say, yes, Shion is there. And he asks, is her face the same? Has she been mutilated as well? To which they respond, yes. George elects at this point not to look because he wants to preserve the memory of Shannon. But he does ask, because from the previous night, he had proposed to her. And the way he had proposed is he gave her a ring and said, I'm ordering you to take this, but I can't order you to accept it, to accept my proposal. And being that she's a servant and he is not one of the guests and a master of the house, they wanted kind of like a code to say what they wanted. So he told her, if you wear it on your ring finger, that's a yes. If you wear it on your other, or not a ring finger, that's a no. So he asks to Cannon and Nanjo, is she wearing a ring? They look and they find one, so they say yes. So he asks, what finger is she wearing it on? At this point, his parents, I think as well as most everyone here, kind of understands what's going on. And his mom, Eva, protests, you didn't. You did not propose to her, to which Hideyoshi's like, not the time, honey. He just lost his fiance, now is not, or potential fiance. This is not the time. to make this into something. And then Nanjo replies, yes, she was wearing it on her ring finger, so she had said yes. And the adults, Hideyoshi, I think it's Hideyoshi in particular, is trying to make George feel better, being like, she was happy on her last day. She has this wonderful ring. She said yes to you. She was ready to marry you. She was probably the happiest she'd ever been before she left. And just remember that happiness that you gave her in that last day. Yeah. So I'm actually surprised they didn't put the information with her in here. But yeah, the one side of her face smashed in. And with that, the adults shooed the kids back to the house. And Natsuhi starts treating this like the crime scene it is. She has Genji pull out the sat phone when he gets back, notify the police to come immediately, and to get a new lock for the shed, since clearly the previous lock was insufficient. And they clarify that there's only one key to this shed, which they still found in the servants' quarters where all the keys are. Meaning, whoever did this either A, had some other way of picking the lock or some other way in, or B, took the key from the servants' room, went outside, killed a bunch of people, or killed them somewhere, because this is not where they were killed, it appears to be. Brought them here, locked it, put the key back, and locked up the house. So, so the adults are dealing with that. They're doing stuff like no one else is allowed into the crime scene. We've already touched a bunch of stuff, trying to make sure people weren't still alive. But they're, like putting the key in a plastic bag, putting the lock in a plastic bag, preserving what they can at this point. And that's where we resume after, that was like a 15-minute summary, because I think that was a very important scene. And I feel like I gave that to you guys in real time, because I think that whole scene was only about 15 or 20 minutes. So I believe we are now following Battler and the kids as they make their way back into the mansion. But before we get any further, if you want to place your bets, one thing that stood out to me looking at this, in all of that last piece, there was one character who I don't think I mentioned at all. That is Kumasawa. Not sure why. She was the only person that I do not recall seeing in that last scene, or who wasn't dead. Maria didn't make a whole lot of an appearance. She just kind of woke everyone up and then watched cartoons. But I don't remember seeing Kumasawa at all. Not even, like I mentioned, like, oh, she was cleaning, like, blah, blah, blah. And then in terms of, I guess, who is to most gain from this, depending on how the inheritance works here, since it was the 4 kids, the question is Eva now the sole inheritor of everything? Because if so, that would make her and her husband prime suspects. Or, since Kraus was the oldest, does his wife maintain his share if it was willed to her? Does she now have a share as well? And what about the kids? Would it go into a trust for them? I don't know if Maria would be physically capable of it, but could Battler have done it? Does he get some kind of inheritance passed down? And I'm not sure if I said hello, Avier. Hello, Avier, if I didn't. I just did a lot of talking. You suspect it was me. Okay. So here is my least favorite thing in kind of murder mystery things. I'm not going to say what murder mystery this is from. If you know, you'll know. My least, and I'm sure there's more than one example of this, but I have one very specific one in my mind. What I don't like is when we're seeing the universe, the game, the book, whatever, through the eyes of a main character, one character, right? If people want to know, you can ask me and I can DM it to you, or maybe I'll spoiler it in Discord after. But what I hate is when you're viewing the story through the lens of a single protagonist, and the medium, game, book, movie, whatever, hides something from us that main character that we're viewing it through knows. For example, let's say in this case, and I don't remember, it's been at least 11 years since I watched the anime for this. And for those of you counting, we're not even done episode 1 of the anime yet. And this was only a 12-episode anime, so basically there's 8 stories on this, 4 in the questions, 4 in the answers. More or less everyone gets like 1.5 episodes worth, which is like 20 minutes. It's a like 22-minute episode, 30-minute condensed for TV. It means they dropped so much context. What I remember, I do remember this episode, which ironically is the only one Mrs. Popeye remembers as well. So we remember them being at the airport, getting on the plane, getting on the boat, making it to the island, all of that, which took us, I think, a whole stream. I think in the anime is like 4 minutes. And then like the kids play. I think they talk about the talismans. There's like the fighting, but a lot of kind of the main characters like discussing like it looked like so and so felt so and so, or like giving the narration backstory of so and so had this motive or grew up this way. Like all of that is gone. They cut out the narrator. They cut out any internal monologues, or they vocalize it. And Battler and Marie are just as unhinged in the anime, so they didn't cut that part out. Anyways, back to the thing I hate is, let's say, in this case, we're viewing this more or less through Battler's eyes when we're with the kids. If Battler was the one who murdered everyone, at this point, we as the audience do not know that, but if we are seeing this through the lens of Battler, we should know this information. When mediums withhold this information from us, and later the main character we are following reveals it, that is my most hated thing. Maybe not most hated, but I hate this trope of like it goes beyond an unreliable narrator. I also hate an unreliable narrator. They have amnesia, they don't remember something, maybe they're seeing things, which is very common in like cheap, lower budget horror movies. So like fine, whatever. But this is like not an unreliable narrator. This is the narrator knows something and is withholding that information from us who's viewing it through their lens. Anyways, that is my whole tangent on that. But if I was looking at this like right now, objectively, and I don't remember what the solution is to these cases. It's been, like I said, 11 or 12 years. Looking at this right now, the people who I would suspect most would probably be Eva, who, one, would benefit from being the only inheritor if it just goes to the kids. Even if it goes to the grandkids, maybe she could say they'll adopt Maria and take her portion as well. So maybe she can get a double portion, maybe and maybe Battler as well if he's not old enough to be his own guardian. They could adopt them and have a triple portion. She's already proven to us that she is a very adept martial artist. I can't remember what martial art, but she's, I think, a black belt in some kind of martial art. So she is very strong. and could potentially take out so many people. The question is, if you were doing this, and I think Nanjo was able to say that they had died about around like 1 a.m. ish, because rigor mortis had set in, so it had been at least 6 hours, and all the adults testified that they stayed up until around midnight. But yeah, that was a half-hour-long tirade. Let's actually get some new content, shall we? All that could be heard was the sound of the rain, the voices from the kids' television program that Maria was watching, and the engrossed Maria's cackling voice. In other words, what greeted them as they returned dumbfounded from that horrible, bizarre scene was the voice of Maria as she rolled around laughing at the television. Not knowing how to explain to Maria that her mother Rosa was dead, those who returned to the room couldn't manage anything more than a suffocating silence. At first, Maria returned their stares with a dubious look. When she realized that they weren't trying to blame her for anything, she ignored them and again immersed herself in the television program. I like that this is called At Death's Door. The children wordlessly sat down on the sofa. This anime as well has a pretty good soundtrack. If you haven't listened to any of my video game mixes that I have on YouTube, I have some of the ones from this, and I don't think there's any spoilers in terms of the background image. Their minds were probably blank from their state of shock. Though they had all cried and mourned so much, they are now just vaguely sat there, their faces expressionless. Only Cannon had returned to his usual calm expression. However, that probably didn't mean he had been able to wipe out the shock. Nothing was reflected in his eyes as he stared into the emptiness. Hideyoshi, fidgeting as he remembered that horrible scene, kept muttering, "Unbelievable. That can't be something of this world. It's the work of the devil." Every once in a while, he turned these into questions and bounced them off Nanjo. Nanjo, in a calm, doctorly manner, kept repeating that nothing can be understood by only glancing at the scene. That until the police arrived, he wouldn't know anything. However, Nanjo only appeared calm by comparison to Hideyoshi, could not contain his agitation and fear. In fact, Nanjo had also received a huge shock, and his face was deathly pale. Maybe it was because of their attitudes that Natsuhi tried to rise to the challenge and take control. Natsuhi was apparently unchanged from her normal attitude. And she briskly gave directions.
かしこまりました。
私も一緒させていただいていいかしら、夏日姉さん。クラウス兄さんがいなくなった以上、お父様の補佐は私の仕事だもの。
Reggie has never heard of anyone named John in their entire life.
その私は夏日姉さんに任せっきりで、
I don't think Reggie knows a whole lot based on how they react to me. Natsumi was struck speechless by Eva's aggressive actions in a situation like this. It seemed that she was claiming that with Kraus dead, the one to take responsibility should not be his wife, but herself, the next highly ranked in the family. Oh yeah, that's right. They explained this when they were at the dinner table. There was a ranking, and Battler felt it weird that his ranking was above Natsuhi and his mom's. Because the way the ranking went, Kinzo is the highest, then his kids in descending order of age. Gender doesn't seem to matter. And then it would be kids in descending order. So I believe that's George, Jessica, I think, is second. Us, and then Maria. And then all the spouses, probably in descending order from Natsuhi, Hideyoshi, and then our mom. So, if we're looking at this objectively again, if we're splitting if we're splitting the inheritance 4 ways, still, if we're not, then it all goes to Eva. If we're splitting it 4 ways, then it would go to Eva, George, so their family gets a double portion. Jessica, Battler, Maria gets nothing. Of course, even Eva's mind had been blank from the shock until just now. She only returned to herself after Natsui started giving orders.
お好きになさるといいでしょう。
Alright, adjusting a window. There we go. Natsui walked out without saying anything more. Eva followed behind her. Mere moments after he left, Kumasawa ran into the parlor. This is the first time I think we've seen her since the previous night. Since she wasn't the kind of person to run around, it would be normal to sense that something had happened. Since everyone had been stricken by that earlier shock, none of them took any notice of this trivial difference.
奥様
夏希姉さんならお父さんのところへ行ったで。すぐ戻ってくるやろ。どないしたんや、熊沢さん。
それが食堂に
I think we found where they were killed! Everyone in the parlor turned to listen. Everyone thought the same thing. I hope I misheard that. Just like how any container has a limit to how much you can put in it, no one felt like they could accept any more tragedies beyond what had already happened, so they all thought it. I hope I misheard that.
なんやて？
朝食の準備に食堂に配膳に行ったら
First to start running was George. His harsh footsteps jogged Hideyoshi and Nanja to their senses, and they chased after him. Battler and the others followed. They flew into the dining hall one after another, but they didn't find any change that would have caused Kumasawa to go pale. Those who viewed the gruesome scene in the storehouse, it was a bit of an anticlimax. However, Kumasawa who followed them pointed it out. There really were some traces of blood on the floor. Compared to that terrible scene, it was not very dramatic. However, if you thought calmly about it, this definitely indicated the loss of a lot of blood.
ここにも血だまりがあるよ。これは一体。
だいぶ時間が経っているように見え、おそらく昨べここで殺されたんだと見ていいでしょう。
The rain outside the window is a nice touch.
そういうことになるんやろな。わしらは昨べずっと食堂で話し合いをしとった。そしてここに何者かが押し入ったにち。
父さんたちが打ち合わせを抜けて休んだのは何時だっけ？
昨夜の24時を少し過ぎた
That lines up, I think, with what was said last week by, I want to say that was Eva.
だからその後にと考えるんが妥当やろな。
Also, if you look at this, so if the adults were talking, Natsuhi goes to bed early because of her headache. The kids all go and do their thing. The servants go and do their thing. Which leaves 4 people there. We know Shannon was closing up the windows. Goda was with them that night, I believe. No, he was in the room where in the servant room in the main house, because Shannon had come to see if there was anything that she could do, and he told her to close up. And we're still not certain where Kumasawa was. Nanja wasn't part of the session, but we have these 4 people. Let's assume that the 2 servants were nearby. And we have 2 people who claim to have left early. They are now the biggest suspects. Because they leave, they can then become the intruders to kill everyone else. At least that's how I would interpret it.
マジかよ。勘弁してくれよ。お嬢様、しっかり。
俺はもうさっ きの倉庫でこの世の地獄ってやつを拝んじまったから。
そうかよ。よかったな。私は頭がどうにかなっちまいそうだぜ。ここは食堂だぜ。私は毎日ここで食事をして、学校のことをぼやいたり、宿題のことをぼやい、親父に学校の成績の、そういうところなんだぜ。
お嬢様、これ以上ここにいるのはよくありません。客間へ戻りましょう。
俺の同感さ。秀吉おじさん、この部屋は多分警察にとって重要な意味があると思います。俺たちが踏み荒らしちまうのはまずい。
Battler proposed this. In a slightly powerful voice, as together with Cannon, he grabbed the pail and shaking Jessica's shoulders.
バトラさんの言う通りですな。この部屋にこれ以上好んで居続けることはありますまい。
Andrew spoke while looking at the pale faces all around. Even though that horrible scene in the storehouse had felt like something not of this world, at least it was in a place far from here, a place we've been able to cut ourselves off and run away from, which had helped everyone to keep going on. However, this dining hall was different. It's in the mansion's main wing, and as Jessica said, it was supposed to be one of the most relaxing places within the mansion. It was the same place where all of the relatives had enjoyed lunch and dinner yesterday. The shock of seeing the place smeared with blood reminded us of that horrible spectacle in the storehouse, and forced us to accept that we really hadn't been able to run away from the scene of that tragedy.
わしも同感や。この部屋には犯人の痕跡が残ってるかもわからんしな。素人のわしらがかき回すべきとちゃうで。はよ出るんや。はよはよ。
Hideyoshi also understood the meaning of what Battler had said and pushed everyone to hurry out of the dining hall. The way we were then, looking at that blood any longer would have been too harsh. Nobody went against his words. Everyone raced each other out of the dining hall, almost as though the last person in the room would be trapped in there, all alone. Once in the hallway, we lent a shoulder to Kumasawa, who was leaning against the wall, still trembling, and we all headed back to the parlor together. Then Genji returned.
源氏さん、警察に連絡はつきましたか？
それが申し訳ございません。無線機の故障か、それ以外の理由によるものかわかりませんが。
なんや、警察に連絡がつかんのか？電話も無線もどっちもダメなんか？
申し訳ございません。月曜の朝に船が来ることになっていますので、その船の通信機を借りることができると思います。
この島には船はないんか？新島の警察署までちょっくら行ってくることはできんのか？秀吉さん、この天気では無理だ。少なくとも台風が通り過ぎるまではどうにもなりません。
クラウス様のボートは今修理中で島にございません。ですので月曜の船を待つほかないかと。
そんなアホな話がある。6人も死んだんやで。そして電話も無線も通じず船もない。台風が過ぎて船が来るまで、つまり明日の朝までわしらは警察にも連絡できず、この島におれっちゅうことなんか？
ってことはつまり俺たちだけじゃなくおじさんたちを殺した犯人もこの島から出られず足止めってことだな。
Okay, important information. The criminal who killed everyone's also on the island, so they couldn't have escaped because of the storm. Also, assuming that there's no boat on the island, it means they've been here since before the storm started, which means that they're either one of us or someone, another person who snuck onto the island at some point somehow.
そういうことになるね。みんなを殺した犯人はまだこの島にいる。
親父たちを殺した奴はこの島から逃げ出せずまだ潜んでやがるってことかよ。くそ見つけ出してやるぜ。警察になんか引き渡すもんか。
I wonder how
私
Maria's
がこの手
taking
でやっ
this.
先にしてやる。
Speak of the devil. Maria had finally realized that something was odd in the parlor. Or rather than noticing something odd, it was probably better to say that she felt unhappy and neglected since everyone else was getting so excited about something only she didn't know about.
ジェシカお姉ちゃん、誰か死んじゃったの？
But she's sharp, apparently. The way she spoke was completely calm, just as though she was talking to characters in a TV drama, so it didn't affect her at all. Jessica probably didn't like that. As though trying to say, "Can't you tell just by looking at me overwhelmed with grief?" She flared up against Maria.
しまったぜ。みんな。私の親父も、パトラの父さんと母さんも、幸田さんもシャノンも、そしてマリアの母さんも。
よすんだジェシカちゃん。悲しいのは君だけじゃない。
マリアさん、ショックだろうが、聞いてください。あなたのお母さんがな、死んでしまいました。
ママが死んじゃった？
ああ。誰かに殺されちまった。悲しいだろうがよ。心をしっかり。
何人死んじゃった？
6人だぜ。6人だ。
I think Maria's gonna bring up the poem.
あんな残酷なことしやがって。踊ってもんがあるだろうがよ。人間ならよ。誰だか知らねえが、犯人は人間じゃねえぜ。血の色が赤いわけがね
え。犯人は人間じゃない。鍵が選んだ。生贄なだけ。
え？おい、マリア、今、なんて言った？
Hello, Beardy. How's it going? We're just about to discuss if the murderer is a human or not. Maria just said something, since the words were so remotely separated from the flow and context of the conversation. For a second, I couldn't understand them. So is a thong human then, if Chaos believes? Doing alright. The dog, of course, has decided to be sick again. He was drooling something wild, like, there was a puddle of drool, like, it was as if his mouth was a leaky faucet, and it was dripping out. He had a puddle about the length and width of my arm under his bed earlier this morning. And it wasn't like it had, he had been, like, really asleep. That happened in, like, 20 minutes. So we called the vet. Vet thought it was weird, but didn't seem like it was an emergency. So he's got an appointment tomorrow afternoon. I joked asked him if he needed a plumber, because it's almost like he has a leak. Other than that, he's totally fine. Like, he's got all his energy. He's eaten everything and more today. He went on a walk and showed all of his energy. So other than this, he's been fine. I just took a look at him. He's just around the wall from me. I took a look at him about 15 minutes ago. He's passed out after having his dinner, as he usually does. He's a very tired boy. He really only exists from around, I would say, 10 to 4 p.m. 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. He exists for 6 hours of the day, and the rest he's just kind of laying about. But yeah, he's so far it seems fine. We're just going to check. We think like maybe he has some kind of infection. He just had his teeth checked like 2 months ago, so we don't think it's anything teeth related. And he let us, like touch around his jaw and his throat, and he didn't seem like there was any pain. So we're kind of at a loss for what it is, but our fingers are crossed that he just had a dream about a really juicy chicken and just like couldn't stop thinking about it. But we'll see tomorrow. I was shocked by the sudden sound of Aunt Natsuki's loud voice coming from the entrance to the parlor. It looked like Aunt Natsuki and Auntie Eva had returned from their trip to see grandfather.
無線でも連絡できない？こんな時に使えなくて何のための防災無線ですか？
申し訳ございません。毎年保守点検はさせているはずなのですが。
ほら、光をチカチカさせるみたいな船舶信号ってあるじゃない？そういうので向こうの島に連絡することはできないのかしら？
そのような設備はございません。申し訳ございません。
Just then, Kumasawa came pushing his serving cart loaded with breakfast. Since there was no way we'd be able to eat in the dining hall, Hideyoshi had ordered her to bring it to the
なぜ
parlor.
朝食をこちらに？
ああ、夏木さん、それは後で話す。それよりエヴァ、お父さんはどうなんや？
ご一緒で
It
な
was
いところ
probably
を
good
見
of
ると
Hideyoshi not to be like, oh, because people were murdered in the dining room, but don't worry, we're just gonna eat here instead. I think that might spoil some appetites, if they aren't already spoiled. Why did the finger cross the road? Is it to get to Beardy's chicken? It's like Popeye's chicken, but in Australia they call it Beardy chicken.
いないわ。部屋は空っぽだったのよ。
Oh, Grandpa's gone missing.
なんやて？
And based on the music, I think the witch has something to do with it.
こんな時にどこ行ったんや？
親方様が書斎を出られたというのですか？
そうです。私も驚いています。いつの間に部屋を出たのやら。あなたたちに心当たりはないのですか？
Matsui looked at Genji and Kanon as she said this. He probably thought that the servants permitted the one-winged eagle who served directly under him would know of a place he might go. However, it seemed to be the other way around. Their faces made it clear that those who knew Kinzo best realized even more than everyone else how impossible it was for him to leave his room.
僕たちにも見当がつきません。
ご存知の通り、親方様はあの書斎の中に、お休みの親方様があの部屋をお出になることなど、よっぽどのことがない限り考えられません。
となると、なんや？そのよっぽどのことがあったって考えるのが自然だっちゅうことになるんか。
まだそうと決まったわけではありません。
Yeah, he was tired of being on this island. He just wanted to come to Canada, where it's a very warm 4 degrees Celsius today.
とにかく気まぐれな方ですから。現状をご存知なく、お一人で散歩をされている可能性もあります。仮にそうだとしたら、一刻も早く現状をお知らせして、ご指示を仰がねばなりません。
So now we have a new suspect. Oh, and he's grayed out now because he's missing. So, colored in is alive and we know the position. Red is confirmed dead. Gray is missing in action.
そうね、考えたくはないけど。お父様の身に何かあったのかもしれないしね。そのような不吉なことは考えたくもありません。
No one had seen Kinzo since the 6 horrible corpses had been found. On top of that, the phones were broken, the radio wouldn't reach anyone, and there was no way to contact the police. Also, I think I just realized another pun because you said pun. I need to Google this pun. There is a slight pun. Okay. So. So, in the place they're in is called Rokunjima. I don't know what I didn't know what all of that meant, and I'm not going to give the full name because that does actually lead to a little bit of spoilers. However, the Roku part of Rokunjima means 6. How many people are currently dead? I went to hit exit, which is behind me right here. I almost hit the exit to just close the game. I was so close to hitting it. It looked like the typhoon would leave tomorrow and a boat would come. But until then, no one could rely on anyone outside the island, nor could they escape the island. Also, fun fact, the building from this game, the mansion they're in, is actually based on a real-life building. I think closing the game is actually the best ending. If I just never opened it, all these people would still be alive. Everyone had lost their composure at the extremely sudden tragedy. A heavy silence and sense of impatience. Even though they needed to do something, they couldn't think of anything. Some of them became irritated, while others merely held their heads in their hands. But none of them could explain what was occurring on this island of Rokunjima. There we go. So, Roku, which I believe is R-O-K-U, means 6. And here it's concatenated into another word, Rokunjima. Japanese does this thing a lot where words carry a lot of meaning, and compound words are often a bunch of different things together. You might have seen this like in German and like Dutch, I think, does a very similar thing. Also on top of that, we'd gone over kind of at the very start that characters have a lot of meaning. And so they went over like kind of the characters and everyone's name. So for example, in Natsuhi, this character on the right, this one here, where it's got like a backwards 5, and then this, I don't know how to describe it, box with like extended bits. So that's a compound character. I don't know what this side is. That might be bow, as in like archery. This part here is woman's. This compound might be like female archer, but the way it works is it can mean something entirely different. For example, the character for tree is just kind of like a plus kind of thing with a curve at the base. And then if you have 2 of those, it's a grove, 3 is a forest. However, if you have one that has a line through, like you're chopping it down, that is book. So there's interesting things like that, where it has a lot of meaning to it. That's more related to honorifics. Japanese is a very specific set of honorifics. Oh. I don't know about that. I don't know enough to say if there's an honorific for, like, like the equivalent of, like, Miss, Mrs., Ms. I don't know if there's something like that. After that, we sat in the parlor and wordlessly chewed through the breakfast that Kumasawa-san had brought. Of course, this was right after something like that had happened. No one had any appetite. However, we realized that not eating would weaken our bodies. It would also be rude to Kumasawa-san, who had made the breakfast. Kumasawa-san had taken the tasteful Western vegetables, ones that Goto-san had probably special ordered for the purpose of some extravagantly fancy dish, and cooked them in a Japanese style, making them turn an unpleasant color. As to what Goto-san had been planning to cook with those ingredients, you're just going to communicate in meows. Languages are confusing. I mean, I've taken formally 2 other languages. I don't really know either of them. One of them I barely remember much of. My French, it's not good. I could probably pass at like being able to get somewhere or like ordering something off of it, like that kind of stuff. But beyond that, conversational, no. But I do love learning these like interesting little like factoids and just kind of how languages develop, and kind of like the interesting parts of that. If I did think about it, I would be reminded of the way Goda-san had died, and the inside of my mouth would be filled with a sour taste. For the time being, everyone pretended to eat, but there was no hope of anyone making any headway into the meal. Then everyone was brought up to speed on the current situation. Yeah, like there's a lot of just entertaining stuff. And like I've tried learning some Japanese, and I can read the hiragana, katakana, just not the kanji. With kanji is the Chinese characters. If you look at their names, they're adopted Chinese characters that have been used. I have several now, but at the time we had one coworker who spoke Mandarin, and we asked her, like, is this character, like, how would you pronounce it? In Japanese, woman is Ona. And it's completely different. I can't remember what character we were talking about, but the meaning is the same. So that's a really interesting piece, that if you write something in kanji, in Mandarin versus Japanese, they can understand the meaning the same way. They can look at this and say, oh, this is a woman, but how they pronounce it is completely different, which is really interesting to me. First off, that Uncle Kraus, my dad, Kyrie-san, Auntie Rosa, Goda-san, and Shannon-chan had been found in the Rose Garden storehouse as cruelly mutilated corpses. And that despite that, we were unable to use phones or radio and still couldn't contact the police. So until the typhoon passed, there was nothing we could do. Even just the etymology of English words, or just words in general, can be fun. For example, the word barbarian has the Latin root barb, which means beard. And throughout time, beards have been something that have come in and out of style. Just fashion comes and goes, and sometimes something retro comes back in. So at the time in Rome, beards were out of style. So a barbarian literally meant ones with beards. Because beards were out of style, it was an insult that you were uncultured. You weren't of the times if you had a beard. So barbarians are literally those people with beards, and they are uncultured because they have beards. Just fun little things like that I enjoy learning. You can blame my grade 9 Latin teacher for that information. I had heard this. I didn't remember this fact, but yes, I had heard this. Yeah, the baby face is mad at the beard chads. Hello, Droth, how's it going? Furthermore, grandfather, who we had hoped might be able to show a little leadership in this kind of situation, disappeared at some point. I don't know who thought he would be able to show some leadership, where all he's done is just stay in his room and pout, but sure. Goda-san hadn't made breakfast, so grandfather's stomach must have been empty. I hope that's Droth and that's not a different destroyer. In which case, hello, new destroyer. So grandfather's stomach must have been empty, and if he had been taking a casual walk... Oh, then sorry, new destroyer. We have a friend who also goes by Destroyer, so sorry, I thought you were them, but coming from YouTube. My apologies, and hope you're doing well. By now, he should have been stomping back to whine about how hungry he was, and yet he hadn't appeared. There was more than a small chance that he'd become caught up in the earlier crime. actually, out of curiosity, so he's still listed as missing, right? Where he's not like half gray, half red now? No, so he's still just listed as missing. Auntie Natsuhi and Auntie Eva had said that on the return trip from going to see Kinzo, they had called out to him on every floor looking for him, but were not able to find him. Yeah, I hope they have really good soundproof walls. Or just like, you know, the story. Hey, Dad, how did you and Mom meet? Not important, but let me tell you how I met Beatrice, kid. If you think about the timing of it all, it was probably best to think that he had been caught up in the crime. If the culprit had taken the trouble to move the bodies of Dad and the rest, who we figured had been killed in the dining hall all the way to the storehouse, then maybe they had already killed Grandfather. Moved his body to some strange location, and we'd simply not found it yet. No one actually said it, but this theory seemed extremely convincing. But then the other part of this is... Grandfather, Kinzo, locks himself in his room. Of which, to my knowledge, there's only 2 keys. One that Kinzo has, and one that Genji had, which he still had in the morning and lent to Natsuhi. Unless Kinzo himself left the room ahead of time. It could be bunnies. Like Monty Python bunnies, just a cute little bunny rabbit, and then it gets ya. So who's got the holy hand grenade of Antioch? That's what we need now, then. Okay, so information that we knew. 1, the mansion was locked in the morning. That was confirmed by Goda? Genji. I think I've got them mixed up. Genji. Goda's the dead one. Yes, okay. Genji. Shannon was closing up the windows, but it looked like she was attacked in the process of that. So I would expect, unless they got to her just as she finished all of them, that some windows are not closed up, or someone else had to go and close them up after. If you've never seen a rabbit angry, it's the funniest thing ever to me. When, like, pet rabbits are angry, like you're not feeding them or not giving them attention, they take one of their feet and, like, stomp it into the ground as well. They do growl, but they also stomp into the ground, yeah. It's like their temper tantrums.
お父様も念入りに探さなければなります。子供たちはこの部屋を出ないように。エヴァさんと秀吉さんは申し訳ありませんが、ここで子供たちと一緒にいてください。南條先生もお願いいたします。
What is it like with rabbits? The closest I have had to a rabbit is babysitting my cousin's pet guinea pig. Yeah, he's got to go find her somewhere. He's been looking that, or he was like, you know what? I want that ring I threw at the window back.
わかりました。ここでお待ちしています。
On Natsuhi led the servants, Genji-san, Kumasawa-san, and Kanon-kun out of the parlor. All that was left was Auntie Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi, Dr. Nanjo, and the 4 of us children, for a total of 7 people. Okay. 4 kids. Hideyoshi, Nanjo, and who was the last one? Was it Kanon? Oh, Genji. Oh, and Eva. Okay. So it's this T, so these 6, plus Nanjo. So for all intents and purposes, the 3 servants there, and Natsuhi are now gone. Yeah, the mouths moving are can be a little bit weird.
みんなで仲良くテレビでも見て待ってよな。
At least in this version, it's fine. In the Higurashi version, if you have the 07th expansion mod on, and you try to toggle between mods with, I think it's P was the key to switch between sprite, and there's multiple characters on screen and one's in the middle of talking, they'll keep talking because you can't interrupt their the mouth moving, but all the other sprites will change to the other version. Mario Odyssey is the only Mario platformer besides the new Mario 3D one that I think I haven't played. Or the new 2D one, rather.
しかし、
It's the only 3D Mario I haven't
ど
played.
んな番組やっとらへんな。
Oh, no, that's a lie. What was what's the one where it was a weirder one? With Bowser, and he like turns into this like big demon thing that can like chase you around the map. Like around the world map while you're looking for stuff. I can't remember what that one's called. I haven't done that one either. I've seen it. It looks weird to me. Yes, Bowser's Fury. Because I always read it as Bowser's Fury and thought Nintendo was trying to, get hip with the times. Uncle Hideyoshi tried to stir up this gloomy atmosphere, acting cheerfully. Man, they got a really good cable connection. They're on an island, so they're not. If they've got like good connection during the storm, they're not on satellite. They had a cable line put across the river.
お、そうか。マリアちゃんはテレビ見るか。じゃあ、おじさんと一緒に見ような。
Marie was the only one who played along. Even though Marie had been told of her mother's death, she didn't show the slightest flicker in her emotions. Was 9 really this young in age? No one else was feeling the slightest bit like joining in. They each sank into their sofas and let their minds go blank.
兄貴、聞いていいか。なんだい。さっき倉庫で。兄貴はシャノンちゃんの指輪の話をしたよな。あれ、送ったのは兄貴か。
Alright, it's time to break things. We will give this our honest best chance. So what we're gonna do is try to find something wrong with this game over the next few minutes. First thing I'm gonna do is save, in case I fully mess something up. Alright, so... Okay, so pressing escape takes us off of the text. It gives you like the screenshot version. So we're gonna read this. What I'm gonna try to do is get someone started into a lip sync action. Do that, see what happens. George Aniki didn't answer, but he hung his head and closed both of his eyes. There could be no clear response. Okay, that was really short. Let's... Okay, so that looks like it's working fine. What about this? What happens if I advance text while there's nothing on the screen? Okay, that brings it back. What do we have in configuration? Object caching off. Okay, that sounds promising. I don't know what it's caching, which is an interesting concept, but we're going to turn caching off. So let's see what we can do. So if we... Okay, so when we hit escape, it's literally just hiding the text. You can see that the rain is still going. Yes, this game has rumble support. It has full controller support. I'm just using a mouse button to click it, or sometimes I'll use just like the space button on my keyboard. Usually I use mouse because it's more silent, doesn't get picked up by the microphone. My microphone's also close to my keyboard. What does clear do? Okay, clear is the exact same as pressing escape. Do we have anything?
さっき倉庫で
Controls.
シャノンちゃんの指輪の話をしたよな。あれ送ったのは
To listen to a voice, tap it with one finger. Okay, what happens if I try to just play a bunch at the same time?
さっきなんだなんだ兄貴なんださっきそうなんだ兄貴なんさっき倉庫で
Okay, I can make a cool
シャノンちゃ
remix.
んの指輪の話をしたよな。
Oh, does it cue it after? Okay, let's find some long...
みんなで仲良くテレビでもみんなで仲良くテレビでも見て
Or
ま
is
っ
it
た
just
よな
that long?
しかし日曜日の午前中はろくな番組やっとらへんな
So what happens if I... So triggering like one then another, it'll stop the first one to play the second. What happens if I try clicking the same long one like 5 times in a row?
みんなで仲良くテレビでも見て待ってよなしかし日曜日の午前中はろくな番組やっとらへんな
Okay, so it still repeats. All that is fine. Let's see what other keys I got here. I'm just pressing different keys to see what I can get to. Hopefully I don't like auto skip or... Okay.
悪いことを聞いたぜ。
Okay, A is auto.
そうさ、僕だよ。
The any key. Let's see. We got insert. At home. Okay. So you can control it with arrow keys. Z opens that menu. Oh, F takes it full screen. That's actually really useful information. Cool. I've been playing in a slightly windowed version. Well, thank you. Glitch Hunter told me how to full screen this game. Great. But actually, can you see it?
彼女に
No, you can't.
求婚したんだ。
So full screen makes it full screen for me, but then you can't see it. So I think that's just an OBS capture issue. That's not a glitch. H goes to messages. J K L advances. Z was that X C V B N M shift control.
返事としてくれって。
Oh, controls fast forward. Okay. I didn't fast forward or anything, did I? It's either control. How about F keys? Okay, F1 pulls up an about. I'm gonna save again so I don't accidentally refresh the game or something dumb. F3, F4, F5, F6, F7, F8, F9, F10, 11, 12. Okay, next thought. I've got 2 extra thumb keys on this mouse. The only use case for them really is when you're on web pages, it's forward and back. How does the game... The game does not care. Okay. Is it possible? How far back does this go?
だな。悪い子なんだい。だな。悪いことを聞いたぜ。
Okay, we found I would consider this a minor bug.
だな。
On the
悪い
side
ことを聞い
here,
たぜ。
this is a user experience bug. So on the side here, you've got this this scroll bar, right? And the up and down arrows can move you up one line at a time. What I would expect, holding it should make it go faster. It doesn't. Or clicking on the pill and dragging would make it go faster.
悪いことを聞いたぜ。
No, I would not like to jump to a line. So there we go. I would call that a minor user experience bug. It's probably the best we're gonna get. It's pretty hard to find something in a visual novel.
なんて言ってたのかな。
シャノンは嘘をつくのが下手だったからよ。ジョージ兄さんのことを言ってるのはすぐにバレバレでさ。自分は使用人の身分だけど親しくしてもいいのだろうかとか、男の人の好きそうなものは何かとか、どういう服を着たら喜ぶかとか、そんなことをいろいろとさ。なんつうのか、そのまあ焼けたぜ。
Hold on, one last idea. This game has controller support, right? Yeah, this is still chapter 1 of the question arc. Okay. This game has controller support. So X is advance. Oh no, X is hide. Circle is advance.
そこで。おしまいかよ。
Okay. No, I would not like to skip. Thank you very much.
ゲストハウスの当番だったらしいんだ。
Okay. Okay, yeah, controller didn't really show anything else. These buttons do nothing. Oh, that turns the sound on and off. That's a really weird button to have. Okay. Select on controller turns off audio for the game. Alright, I feel like I skipped over some things.
それが婚約指輪を渡されて、そこでおしまいかよ。
価値観は人それぞれだけどよ。男から求婚されるってのは。
Yeah, I mean, being the first one, they've got to put more into the prologue to kind of introduce stuff, but yeah, it is pretty long. I think in terms of time on stream, we're about 12 hours in. It was about 11 hours before the first murder happened, which is a long time.
一番幸せだったと思うぜ。
でもシャノンは僕と一緒にゲストハウスに帰るのを恥ずかしがってお屋敷に行ってしまった。
シャノンの気持ちを察しろよ。婚約指輪をもらえばどんなに予告されてたって普通は舞い上がっちまって頭は真っ白になっちまうぜ。気恥ずかしくて仕方なかったんだろうよ。
それでシャノンは当番でないはずのお屋敷へ行き、事件に巻き込まれてしまった。僕があの日あの場所で指輪なんか渡さなければサヨは事件に巻き込まれなかったんだ。
I'm not sure if this is the case, but this phrase right here, on that day, in that place, the Japanese, at least for this, is the exact same that's used in one of the character songs from Higurashi. I'm not sure if that's an homage to that or if it's just they went with the same wording. That's oddly specific.
兄貴、それだけは違うぜ。断じて違う。だから、それ以上泣くんじゃね
え。There's still a killer there? Yeah, you might want to take your chances with the storm. Yeah.
バトラ君、そっとしてあげなさい。
Those words from Aunt Eva have stopped talking to him. Misplaced words of comfort might actually hurt him. Jessica sat down next to Aniki and quietly put an arm around him. Maybe only Jessica, who'd known about Aniki and Shannon's love since the beginning, who'd been discussing that relationship with Shannon, could comfort Aniki now. I went over to Aunt Eva and sat down on the opposite sofa.
強いわね。もうだいぶしっかりしているように見えるわよ。
まあ、ほら、愛の深さが傷の深さじゃないですか。俺は別にあんなクソ親父同志の方が知ったことじゃないし、桐江さんは気の毒ですが、まあ本当の親ってわけじゃないですしね。
あら、という割にはさっきすっごく大泣きしてたわよ。
まあ育ての親に対する恩はあのくらい泣けば OK かと思いまして。
そのあたりの切り替えの速さやドライなあたりは本当にルドルフ譲りね。あの子は昔から激しく喜んだり悲しんだり怒ったりしたけれど、すぐにケロリと平静を取り戻したわ。
そんなことはないっすよ。俺だってまだまだ心のショックから立ち直れちゃいません。
I think it's supposed to be a cross symbol. Yeah. It being upside down, does that mean something? That I'm not sure of. I also can't quite... He's got some kind of like gold pin or something on his left lapel that I can't tell from this angle as well. Maybe it's just the same as these ones on his, whatever you call this part of his suit. Yeah, it's his attorney badge. You're right, Samus's.
ただ俺がみんなと違うのは、それによってどういう感情が生み出されるかってことだと思います。
どういうこと？
I was acting much calmer than George, Aniki, and Jessica were. That wasn't because my sadness was less intense and had already sprung back to normal. It was because my sadness had been gradually replaced by a different emotion.
っていうよりは腹立たしいって気持ちなんすよ。どこのドイツがこんなことをしやがったのか。横っ面に一発お見舞いしてやらないことには。
That was what I really wanted to do. It's like I couldn't allow myself to just sit here overwhelmed with sadness and hugging my knees.
親父たちが殺されて以降、この島は台風に包まれたままです。つまりこれだけの上等を決めてくれやがった野郎はまだこの島の中にいるってことです。
そういうことになるわね。今も暗い森のどこかに身を潜めているのかしら。
I felt like I'd had a very similar conversation with Kyrie-san that night before. That's right. After the letter from the person who claimed to be Beatrice appeared at the dinner table that night, we talked about whether or not the 19th person actually exists.
エヴァおばさん、この殺人、昨夜のベアトリーチェの手紙と何か関連があるの？
ああ、例の？さあ、どうかしらね。あの手紙はお父様が遺産問題に絡みたくて出した。
Does your voice actors always play the most annoyingly like person who talks in circles or anything without giving a straight answer?
それと今朝の事件に関係があるかは今の段階では分かりかねるわね。
あの手紙、本当にベアトリーチェなんて魔女がマリアに渡したんすかね？
まさか全部お父様の仕組んだ茶番でしょ。シャノンちゃんあたりに肖像画のドレスを着させてマリアちゃんを騙したんでしょ。お父様らしい手の込みすぎたいたずらだと思うけど。
昨べキリエさんとベアトリーチェは実在するんだろうかって話をしたんですけど、キリエさんも俺たち18人の中にベアトリーチェがいるだろうと言ってましたね。
そんなの当然じゃない。この島には私たちしかいないのよ。なら私たちの中の誰かが。
この島には俺たち以外はいないっすか？
当然でしょ。私たち以外の誰がここにいるっていうの？この島には私たちしかいない。
So Eva right now is basically saying the killer is one of us. One of the remaining people alive. There's no way one of those people unalive themselves after all that.
18人しかいない。ならベアトリーチェを語るのも18人の中の誰かしかいないじゃない。
Kiryu-san had denied that there was a 19th person by flipping over the chessboard. Even though Auntie Eva hadn't constructed an argument that complicated, her opinion was at least the same. Except, if that is the case, our situation starts to look very ugly. At the time of Beatrice's letter, we were able to dismiss the matter as just someone's prank. Yeah, I don't know how she knows that, because we haven't been there for more than like a day. So in the past, someone could have snuck on or taken a ship and had someone, a friend drop them off near the shore or whatever. Like scuba dive over. I don't know how far the distance is. Maybe you could like swim all the way if you're a really strong swimmer. If we deny the existence of a 19th person at this point, matters are not so jovial. In other words,
19人目がいないなら親父たちを殺した犯人も18人の中にいるってことになっちまうじゃないですか。つまり今この屋敷にいる誰かが殺したってことになる。
Auntie Eva smiled meaningfully. It looked like Auntie thought that this conclusion should have been obvious from the very
犯
beginning.
人は倉庫の中に6人の遺体を運び込んだわ。でもよく倉庫の中に運び込めたわよね。あのシャッターは常に閉められていて施錠されていたそうよ。つまり倉庫内に運び込むにはシャッターの施錠を開ける必要があった。わかる？
たまたまその日シャッターが開けっぱなしになってた可能性
Then it
が。
wouldn't have been locked at the end.
使用人たちは常に閉めていると言ってたわ。つまり鍵を使用人室から持ち出さなくては倉庫は絶対に開けられない。
鍵は使用人室の一つしかないんすかね。
源氏さんはそうだと言ってるわ。ということは犯人はそのたった一つの倉庫の鍵のありかを知っていて持ち出した。さっきカノン君が使用人室に鍵を戻すところを見たの。壁にびっしりと鍵がかけられていてとても素人にはどこに犯人はその中から倉庫の鍵を見事選び出したの。しかも札も何もついていない鍵を手にしてバラ庭園裏にある倉庫の鍵だと理解した。ついでに言うと倉庫の場所すら理解している。もっとはっきり断言する。犯人は使用人室の内部にも熟知している。
Her argument was extremely plain and clear. The bodies had been thrown somewhere in the bushes of the rose garden. No explanation would have been necessary. However, one key to the storehouse was in the servants' room. And so with a large group of other keys, such that a novice would not be able to tell them apart. This meant that the culprit was someone who was used to going in and out of the servant room and knew well where the key was. Alright, if we're going this way. So, Nanjo isn't really a servant. He's just a friend. Obviously, the people who are dead couldn't have done it. So she's insinuating one of the following. Probably you're going to argue Kumasawa, by herself at least, could not overtake some of these people. That surely someone would be able to fight back against her. So probably she's pointing towards Genji. Kennen is young. I don't know if we remember how old they are, but probably mid-teens. I think they're supposed to be about the same age as us. We're still in high school, so they're maybe like 17-ish. Still probably a relatively healthy adult male could take them if it came to a physical altercation. Unless we're talking about drug, chloroform, something like that. And yes, they would have had to move the 6 bodies from the dining room, which is in the main house, outside, through one of the doors, through the garden, into the shed, lock it, return the key, and somehow not make a mess of blood all the way through the house, only in the shed and the dining room. The family didn't normally go into the servant room, which meant that...
ってことは使用人の誰かが犯人。
悪いけどそれ以上はおばさんも言えないわよ。でも一つだけ教えられることがあるわ。
I can't say anything more than that. However, I'll say more than that.
なんすか？
犯人たちは複数で。
The storm itself might have stopped the drag marks outside, but what about inside the mansion? Like the fact that there was no trace of blood outside of the dining hall, except for the blood that was on Natsuhi's doorknob. As far as we know, that's the only other trace of blood that was inside the mansion. Which means that someone, either someone after they were, hit over the head, or the killer themselves, tried to open Natsuhi's door.
だってそうでしょ。食堂にいた兄さんたち4人を一度に襲って殺し、合計6人分の遺体をようやくバラ庭園の向こうの倉庫まで運んで悪趣味な化粧と落書きを施している。これだけのことを単独犯で行えるはずもないでしょう。
So she's arguing it's impossible that there's a single culprit. You've got multiple culprits. Probably at the very minimum, she's arguing Genji plus canon. And blood is pretty hard to get out of stuff. That being said, like, I don't know, if you've got like a, red carpet or, a darker colored carpet with a pattern in it, like maybe it's possible that it blended in reasonably well enough. But also to not get like the blood on your clothing. Is that my dog snoring? Yes, it is. You can do what's in the mob movies. You know if you're gonna get hit if you walk into a mob house and they've replaced the floor with like a linoleum tile and they've got a tarp over it, so that way they can just kill you. Replace, like, wipe down the tile, replace it, take you up in the tarp and go. From what? So the timeline is, if we are to believe Eva and Hideyoshi, they left shortly after midnight. I think they said about 12:15, whereas the other 4 plus Goda stayed in the dining room to keep talking. Shannon was closing up the windows outside in the main house, so somewhere in the corridor. From what Nanjo said, they were found at about 8 a.m. and they had already started to go stiff. So he said that meant they had been dead for at least 6 hours. So if they were found at 8, dead for 6 hours, they died no later than 2 a.m. Meaning, if we believe Eva and Hideyoshi's story that they left at 12:15 and went to bed and never saw anything else, take that with a grain of salt. They could be killers. That the murder happened sometime from around like 12:30 to 2 a.m. Now, they would have had all the time after that to move and clean, so they still had all of that time to do stuff. But if we take it from, let's say they were somehow able to, right at 12:30, kill everyone really fast in like, a minute or two, and then people started appearing in the house at 6 a.m. I think the servants started like cooking and cleaning, whereas people, the masters of the house, were appearing at about 7. So you had to be done by about 6 a.m., meaning at most you had 5.5 hours to do all this. No, he is a GP, not a coroner. So he has the medical knowledge to say they've been dead for this long, but not to say what they died of or anything else like that. Again, if you believe Nanjo at his word, that is his specialty, because we have no one else to validate that. It was impossible. It might not have been if a single person spent enough time on it, but that would have taken ages. There's probably just to think that a significant number of people have been part of it.
Phew. ってことは、使用人の人たちがみんなグルだろって言ってんすか？
静かになさいな。憶測で言っちゃ悪いわよ。それにもし本当にそうだったらどうするつもり？彼らは私たちを生かして返さないでしょうね。しかも兄さんたち4人をやすやすと殺した相手なのよ。今この部屋に残っていてまともに戦えそうな人間はうちの家族の3人にせいぜいバトラ君で4人ってところ。状況は昨晩と何も変わらない。つまり犯人にとって残る私たちを皆殺しにするなんて簡単なことなのよ。
I don't agree with this statement, because before there was some element of surprise. Now, everyone's on their toes, knowing there's a killer out there. It would not be as easy. I mean, I guess you have the easy part of maybe the kids aren't. So she's saying 4 people. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So she's saying Jessica, Maria, Nanjo are not strong enough to put up a fight. Which is maybe fair. I don't know. Maybe Jessica has young person strength. I've been playing detective with Auntie Eva out of a desire to expose the person who killed Dad and the rest before the police did. If I could manage to skillfully penetrate the culprit's identity, I want to stick the evidence in their face. Oh yeah, like... Can we see? So... He's got multiple. He's got one on his pants, one on his cape. Lapel. You don't have it because you're not in the family. You don't have it? I guess you don't. But yeah, her, just like right on the arm, I think is the worst. Because everyone else is clothing, right? I don't think anyone else... you're not. Clothing. Your cravat. On your whatever this middle part of the like corset part of this dress, and then the servants I think all just have it on your. Oh no, Shannon also has it tattooed on her leg, so Shannon's also hardcore. Unless she has one of those like fake pants that's designed to look like it's your skin, but it's not. That like people in dresses will sometimes wear like in really cold climates. My wife has some of those. Lapel. I don't see yours. I mean, I guess they also don't have to wear it. They just have the option. I'd gotten in my head that if I did that, the culprit would give up and surrender, just like one of those detective movies. Yeah, I'm not sure why the servants but not the spouses. Maybe it's because Kinzo feels like he gets to choose the servants, so they're actually closer to people he trusts rather than spouses of his kids who he has like no say in who they marry. However, the culprit only surrenders there because they are in a situation where resisting would be futile. The culprits behind these incidents on the island were far from helpless. They might even be able to massacre all the remaining people on the island. On top of that, the island was like a giant locked room cut off from the outside world by the typhoon. They had the full day until tomorrow to kill, scheme, and cover up their handiwork. In short, we weren't in the kind of safe atmosphere where we could entertain ourselves by playing detective. On the contrary, we were at a stage where we had to be scared stiff, since playing detective might displease the culprits and cause them to repeat another mass murder.
あくまでも可能性の問題よ。でも私は使用人の人たち
Also,
を
she
まだ
just
信用できない。
doesn't have it there. She has it here, 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 here. She's got like, she really wants to know, like, this is my family, this is my identity.
そう、私は使用人だけを疑ってるわけじゃないの。
I mean, I guess in modern times you could, like, you wouldn't need anyone else on the island. Just, like, get, like, Amazon drones or whatever to deliver stuff. Sure, if there's a storm coming, maybe you're cut off for a few days, but, get, like, a really good internet line installed and order food ahead of time.
さらに黒幕がいるかもしれないと思ってる。
黒幕？どうしてですか？
勘よ。使用人は書いて字のごとし、誰かに使用されて手足となる存在よ。殺されたのは後宮家の親族ばかり。なら、その結果で利害が発生する人間が関わるのは当然。
There's like, who isn't related to the Ushiromia family? I guess it's just Nanjo. This was also plain and clear. The Ushiromia family were currently right in the middle of discussing how to distribute the inheritance if grandfather died. If this followed the formulaic plot used to death by many classic mystery novels, it would definitely be a crime by someone with ties to the Ushiromia family who was entangled in the inheritance problem. Auntie had probably read a few books in that genre. Her theory did have a few one-sided conclusions to it, but it was a run-of-the-mill idea that anyone would surely hit upon. I think anyone would have suspected the servants, even if their logic was different. Hello, Droop. How's it going? How's the insanity speed run? Samus is welcome in with the raid. How's everyone doing? We're playing Umineko. Before we go any further, I just want to let people know this game has some pretty mature themes, including but not limited to death, murder, torture, child abuse, all of those things against minor. That's your warning. We're literally just talking about who could possibly be the killer who just killed 6 people on the island. So that is your trigger warning. And thank you for shouting them out, Sam says. I'm going to catch about chat, which is something I feel like I haven't said in quite some time. Yeah, why move the bodies? And they spent their time to prove that they knew how to get to the key for this rose shed. Which, as Auntie Eva said, basically meant they knew what key was which for the rose shed and where the rose shed was. They made it more work for themselves in terms of moving the bodies there. Probably made it more of a mess to clean up, both their own clothes and any like drag marks around the mansion in general. And then it's a cheerful, uplifting tale. That is correct.
気に入らないって？何の話？
あ、いえいえ、こっちの話っす。
I dodged the question by joking, but I couldn't wipe out the sense of unease I felt inside of me. Because the reason we'd arrived at was altogether too simple. Reasoning that anyone could arrive at, and I just couldn't accept that. I tried flipping over the chessboard like I'd learned from Kyrie-san. That was exactly why it was impossible for the servants to be the culprits. Oh, here was the door to the shed I was trying to describe before. One of these like roller doors that storefronts will sometimes use to close up like for the night. If the servants really had been the culprits, they wouldn't have hidden the bodies in a place that was tied to themselves. Certainly not the Rose Garden storehouse of all place, whose key they themselves controlled. The police probably immediately pursue whoever had been in control of the key. That would create a danger for exposure. If we were to assume that they were the culprits, they had no reason to carry the body into the storehouse. Did they expect us to think that, and so put them in the storehouse deliberately? No, that definitely didn't make sense. Yes, Auntie Eva is making the assertion that only a servant would know where the key to the shed was. Because it's one of those ones, like, if you've ever seen like one of those old-timey hotels and they come and they have like all the keys like on a big board, but in this case they don't have like a room number, there's no labels on it, meaning you have to know, you know, the top left key is for the boat or whatever. So she's asserting that since you would have to know where those keys are, if the only people who know that are the servants, and since you needed to overpower 4 grown adults, that it is multiple servants at the same time. That is her assertion. Now, Battler is making the assertion that, okay, let's think about it the other way. If I was a servant committing a murder, why would I hide the bodies in a place that basically says only a servant would know how to get here? That doesn't make sense, assuming you're thinking logically, which is a big assumption. You know, if people panic, sometimes you do stuff that doesn't make sense. But Battler's going about it the opposite way and making the assertion it could only be not the servants, because the servants wouldn't do this and put themselves in a situation where they are the targets once the police arrive. So that's the two sides. And if we're still playing the follow the money, who bono, who benefits from this? It is Auntie Eva, who is now the sole inheritor of all of Grandpa's stuff. And if Grandpa himself is also dead, that means he cannot change his will now. And she is set to gain everything. Yeah, and this is exactly what Battler is saying right now. That if you did the reverse psychology, that's fine, but once the police arrive, the police are going to probably go after the servants because they're going to look at the easiest point, which is the servants had the key. So Battler's point to the reverse psychology argument is maybe that works for now, but as soon as the police arrive, that's not going to fly anymore. Yeah, and that's exactly why, Beardy, if you look at the characters, so people with regular color alive, red is dead, gray is MIA. Is the feral cat in cahoots with the bunnies? If so, then maybe. When the police come and inspect the site, all kinds of things will probably become clear. No matter how deeply careful the culprits were carrying out murder, some kinds of traces will definitely be found. In summary, they have everything to lose and nothing to gain. I hate watching that, like, is this cake stuff? I'm bad at guessing that. Also, my wife really likes people on like TikTok that make things out of slime, like the gooey slime stuff, to look like real things, and she'll show me something, and like partway through I'll be like, "This is slime, isn't it?" And then you'll see the person just like smush everything together, and I hate it. If you like slime girls, there may be a surprise for you in about 3 months' time. Yes, and we were talking about this at the start. Last stream, so all the grandkids that night slept together in the same room. Assuming that someone didn't wake up, sneak out without anyone else knowing, the 4 grandkids are clear. Grandpa stays by himself in his room, unsure, and he's not around for questioning. We have no idea what Kumasawa was doing. She was not mentioned at all so far, to our knowledge. Kanon and Genji were in the guest house servant quarters. We've already split up. We're already in Natsuhi, Genji, Kanon, and Kumasawa are separate. And then Nanjo, Eva, Hideyoshi, and all the grandkids are together. If you think about it this way, and look at the game from the culprit side, it feels like there's no point in advertising the location of the corpses. Bodies were found, a report will be sent to the police. And it's not like they even tried to hide it. They drew a giant, pentagram out of blood on the front of it. It wasn't that they put it in there trying to delay the inevitable. They made it known it's inside here. They did not try to hide it. Also, based on how people are talking, it doesn't seem like they tried to hide the blood evidence in the dining room either. The remaining people would be more cautious. They would start looking for who was responsible. Anyway, none of these things would make the culprit feel any more comfortable. Just like the words of the main character's mother in a novel I recently read called Higurashi no Nakokoni, which, again, Ryushiki has come out saying, these 2 titles, Umineko and Higurashi, are not the same universe. I call bullshit, first of all. But second of all, you can't be putting in stuff like this and be like, oh no, they're not connected. A mystery story has 4 parts: introduction, development, turn, and conclusion. And so to commit the perfect crime, it is essential to eliminate the introduction. Yeah, and I think this was they can. But we haven't got to it yet, but Baron Castell appears in both of them. I find it hard to believe that you can have a character in both of them and say it's not the same, somehow connected. But I believe this is a Poro quote, essentially. Right now, no one knew where grandfather was. We didn't know whether he'd already become a victim or if he was one of the culprits. But this state of confusion had to be beneficial to whomever did this. Well, also, Rika and Baron Castell are 2 different people, technically. Because Rika is the person living now, and Baron Castell is her, collective consciousness. So, I'm not quite sure how you, they are related, and Baron Castell is essentially all of the Rikas put together. We also haven't got to it, but they're going to introduce another character who is all of another character's consciousness put together, called Lambda Delta. We're not there yet. By blatantly advertising the bodies to us and declaring, hey, there's a murder case going on, the culprit had absolutely nothing to gain. Right, that was where we could flip over the chessboard. This blatant advertising of the bodies was itself the culprit's goal. So they weren't putting them here to hide it. They were putting them here to be found. Now, what's gained by them being found here? Well, if we look at this information, at the time when the bodies were found, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Maria was watching TV, 7, 8, 9 people were there. the only people not there, if this was a distraction, Maria, Kumasawa, and Grandpa. Those are the only people not there when the bodies were found. What if it was put there as a distraction by someone to go to Kinzo, or for Kinzo to sneak out, or for something else to happen? Yeah, I mean, they would have been drawn on from how it looks. It looks like it has like a little like overhang, and then the actual like garage thing is here, so it itself would be covered. And like, unless the rain was like really slanting, which it might be in like a typhoon, there would be like good wind to it. And you can see that there's some drips to it, so it definitely wasn't fully dry. Yeah. As far as we know, there was no stencil. Just I don't know, just a finger. So it may well be that the culprit having the 6 corpses be present there meant more than the deaths themselves. In other words, the culprit wanted to display these murders. We do not have information about the wind and the direction the building was facing. But to whom? To us. It was a message. The culprit was trying to shove something in our faces. I didn't know what that could be. At the current time, none of us could grasp anything from this vulgar mass murder except malice. Malice towards everyone, perhaps? There, the direction of the rain is down. Is that helpful? Each one of the survivors had had some kind of connection to one of the 6 who had been killed. Uncle Krause's death brought sorrow to Jessica's family. Deaths of Dad and Kiri's son brought sorrow to me. Auntie Rose's death brought sorrow to... I don't know if Maria's really got sorrow, but sure. Oda-san's death was probably dealt a shock to his fellow servants. Shannon-chan's death brought grief to George Aniki, who proposed to her, and to Kennen-kun, who had loved her like an older sister. Everyone on this island had received an equal amount of sadness. Auntie Eva had claimed that the servants were definitely in cahoots. Yeah, you gotta have everyone try to draw a perfect circle. Then how can you explain the deaths of Goda-san and Shannon-chan? By this argument, the grief caused by the 6 deaths, everyone but Auntie Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi. It is very possible to doubt Auntie Eva herself, acting like she was outside the net of suspicion, and who might have been trying to point that suspicion at the servants. In the first place, she had managed to avoid suspicion and place on the servants with that argument about the key to the shutter. If you look at it from a perspective of motive, about who would gain something from the murders, Auntie Eva's name floated to the top of the list.
バトラ君が何を考えてるかおばさんわかるわよ。
わ嫌だな。内緒にしててくださいよ。あんなことやこんなことで頭をいっぱいにしてたなんて。
He's talking about, like, porn.
私がこの殺人で一番得をする。どうせ疑われるだろうから先に自己申告しておくわ。
I tried to dodge this conversation by joking around, but it looks like it hadn't
遺
worked.
産は兄弟の数で分割する。でも今や4兄弟は私一人。
I am 4 people now.
後ろ宮家の全財産は全て私のものになるの。
Yeah. I remember when I played through the Higurashi one, someone had done... Because it's so hard to judge a visual novel and how long it'll take. Because I'm on stream and I'm talking about it, it's going to take infinitely longer than if I had just done this by myself. And if you have it on, like, auto, like, you can go much faster, right? You don't have to listen to their voices, you can probably read faster than what people are talking most of the times. When Samus leaves, excitement happens. Got it. But yeah, so the best way I've seen people kind of calculate the length of visual novels is by word count. And Higurashi, I know Umineko, I'm pretty sure is a smaller collection as a whole. Because Higurashi has so many spin-offs. If you have the 07th mod for the 4th game and you have those like 28 extra games, it's insane how much extra content there is. If I remember correctly, I think if you take all of the content of Higurashi, just in terms of word count, and this is also harder because the originals aren't in English, so you're having to translate it and then do word count, so it's not an exact science, of course. I think Higurashi is roughly 3 times the length of the Bible in terms of word count, putting it in perspective as to how long it actually is. And yes, there is lots of slice of life stuff. The first maybe like quarter of every single thing is slice of life. So if you take out a quarter of it and you're like, okay, it's not 3 Bibles, it's 2.6 Bibles or whatever. That's still a lot of text to go through.
秀吉おじさんが聞いたら予算か言えばシャレにならんって。
ごめんね。どう取り繕ったってどうせ疑われるだろうからふざけただけよ。だからこの殺人は私の立場から見れば私を疑わせるためのものではないかと思ってるの。困ったことに昨べのアリバイは弱いわ。
聞かせてもらってもいいですか、昨べのことを。
バトラ君たちも知っている通り、兄弟が遺産をどう食いちぎり合うかという話し合いは深夜まで続いたわ。でも何時まで続いたかは知らない。私と主人は朝が早かったからね。もう眠くて24時を過ぎたあたりで抜けさせてもらったの。そしてゲストハウスに戻って休んだわ。
それを秀吉おじさん以外の誰かに証明できるっすか？いやいや、別にエヴァおばさんを疑ってるわけじゃないっすよ。
あら、どうだか。証明になるかわからないけれど、ゲストハウスに戻ってきた時、源氏さんに出迎えを受けてタオルはいるかと聞かれたわ。だから私たちがゲストハウスに戻ってきた時間は24時過ぎだと証明してくれると思うわよ。もっとも私の仮説通り使用人たちもグルなのだとしたらこんなのアリバイにならないけどね。
確かにそうっすね。ってことは俺今真犯人と推理ごっこをしてるってことになるんすか？
でも私の名誉のために言わせてもらうけど、遺産目当てだったならこんな変な殺人はしないわよ。だって遺産相続権を喪失させるだけならどんな死に方だって構わない。むしろ事故死に見せかけた方がスマートでしょ。使用人たちを抱き込んで周到に計画していたならなおさらそうするでしょうよ。
確かにそうっすね。営利で人を殺すならそれは常に殺人に見せるべきではない。
そういうこと。だからおばさんは今からとてもブルーな気持ちなわけ。警察には黒幕扱いされて散々調べられるでしょうね。やだやだ。
Aunt Eva shrugged with a bitter smile. Just like it was easy to think of the servants as suspicious, it was also very easy to think of Auntie as suspicious. If we flip over the chessboard, did that mean it was impossible for the culprit to be the easily doubtable Auntie Eva? Or if the logic could pass so easily, then motive wouldn't count for anything. No, that can't be right. Knowing the motive should be a big clue towards knowing the culprit. That is why murders throughout history have tried to ensure their motive will not be found out by skillfully complicating the incidents. I don't know. Every time I flip over the chessboard, it keeps flipping from front to back and back to front. Alright, take care, Samuses. I'm sure someone will die in about 5 minutes. Honestly, we probably won't go too much later anyways. My thoughts closing in on the truth, or... Auntie Eva didn't want to talk any more than that, so I headed to the window, folding my arms so I could cool my head a little. I looked over the parlor. I saw George, Anarchy, and the others gathered, talking. It's like they were talking about the magic circle that had been painted onto the shutter. As Uncle Hideyoshi thought back to that time, he started drawing a shape on the margins of Maria's notebook. Yes, Maria is second only to grandfather knowledge of the occult, so she might understand what it meant.
多分こんな感じだったと思うで。十字架をアレンジしたみたいなマークが書かれとったんや。そしてこんな感じで外周の円を取り囲むように妙な文字がびっしり書き込まれていて、十字架の上下左右の辺とその四隅にも何か書かれていたんや。アルファベットとかそういうのとちゃうで。あれはよく言う古代文字とかいうやつや。
あと円周部の頂点に小さなマークがありましたな。小さな丸を5つ十字状に並べ、それぞれを直線で結んだようなマークでした。
ああ、確かにそんなのも書いてあったで。うん。図形的には間違いなくこれや。細かい文字はわからんが、配列はほぼ同じや。
Everyone was staring down at the shape, so I stared down at it too. From what I'd heard, this had been painted on the shutter to the storehouse with some material that looked like blood. I see. It sure is unsettling.
こんなわけのわかんねえもんを書きたがるのはじいさまだけだろ。まったくどこに行っちまったんだ。とっ捕まえて意味を聞き出してやりたいぜ。
Jessica's voice contained impatience and anger. She hadn't gone so far as to say that Grandfather was the culprit, but it looked as though she thought that Grandfather definitely knew the culprit's identity. Certainly, if you asked around for the link that bound the Ushirimiya family and the occult together, 10 out of 10 people would name Grandfather. And to a person who knew nothing of the occult, this strange mark would have no meaning, which meant that it might have been something addressed to Grandfather. That's right, the reason to advertise the crimes show it off to the survivors. In that case, where had Grandfather, as the essential recipient of this message, disappeared off to?
こんな図形に何か心当たりはあるかい?
Maria looked at the shape with a serious face. Maybe she was enthusiastic since this was her area of expertise. However, her appearance was that of someone separated from the events at hand. So this thing hadn't been drawn on the shutter closed around her mother's
僕の
corpse.
第一印象ではどこか外国の十字章に似たデザインだなって思ったかな。
ああ、確かにこんなデザインや。ということはどこぞの国と何か関係があるんか？
その国の十字章はもともと聖地巡礼者を守るための騎士修道士たちの紋章だったそうですな。
つまりこの魔法陣には宗教的な意味があるってことかよ。ますますにちんぷんかんぷんだぜ。
When I looked over at all of them, prepared to jump into the discussion, something shocked me. Maria was grinning, an eerie expression on her face that defied description. A sort of grin, almost like she was making fun of everyone's ignorance. It was an expression that I wouldn't ever have believed Maria to be capable of making. And then she laughed. An eerie, jarring laugh. Even though I was looking at it right in front of my eyes, I didn't really want to accept it as real.
全然違うよみんな。
When they bring Samus back, I don't like this.
こんなの見てわかんないかな。
While everyone was scared of their wits, Maria alone kept on cackling happily. After a while, that laugh suddenly and abruptly cut off, but her expression was still like someone completely different from Maria.
これは太陽の7の魔法陣だよ。書かれてる文字はヘブライ語。貸して。
Maria stole the writing materials from the stunned Hideyoshi's hand. She then started drawing another magic circle, effortlessly, right next to the one that Hideyoshi had drawn.
ね、こんな図形だったんじゃないかな。
そんな図形だった。
マリア、すごいな。さすが詳しいぜ。
Jessica tried to smooth things over by praising Maria. Maybe she wanted to make sure that this was still the Maria who everyone knew so well, but Maria didn't give her any particular response. Maria started fluently writing unfamiliar characters in the corners of the shade. At this sight, the eyes of Uncle Hideyoshi and Dr. Nanjo instantly began to widen.
天地と左右に書かれているのは風化水道を司る天使たちの名。カサン、アレル、タリアハド、そしてフォルラク。そして斜め四方には4代の統治者たちの名。アリエル、セラフ、タルシス、ケルブ。合ってる？
Even if you're unable to correctly write what you've seen, you're once again shown something identical. It isn't difficult to state that the two are the same. Asked by Maria whether they matched, Uncle Hideyoshi and Dr. Nanjo nodded over and over again.
間違いない。そうや。確かにこんな文字が書かれとった。なんでこんなん書けるんや。あと演習部に。
分かってるね。こうでしょ。
Maria began jotting down Hebrew all around the
旧
circumference.
約聖書の詩編第116編の16節と17節だよ。聖書くらい読んでなきゃ。
Acting as though knowing this was only common sense, Maria laughed. For a while, everyone, including me, was at a loss for words. For some moments, Georgia Anarchy returned to her senses and slowly managed to speak.
すごいね。驚いたよ。それでこの魔法陣にはどんな意味があるんだい？
太陽の力を借りる魔法陣だよ。黄金で描き、護符にして身につけたる者はいかなる牢獄であろうとも束縛から逃れ自由を得られる力を授けられる。
束縛から逃れ自由を得ら意味深だぜ。
この束縛という意味は何も肉体的なものだけを指さないと解釈されている。だから縛られて牢屋にいる人ばかりに意味があるわけじゃない。しがらみや逃れぬ運命など精神的な束縛からの解放も意味してるんだよ。
しがらみや逃れ得ぬ運命、これまた意味深だな。
しかしさっぱりわからん。それとあの6人の遺体とどんな関係があるっち。束縛からの解放どころか殺された上に倉庫に閉じ込められてたんやで。
別にその6人のために魔法陣が描かれてるわけじゃないね。魔法陣のために6人はそこにいるんでしょ。お気の毒だよ。
どういう意味だい？魔法陣のために6人がいるってのは一体。
Maria lifted her index finger and waggled it as if she were making fun of us.
それは演習部に書いてるよ。読めないかな。詩編第116編16節と17節読んであげるよ。主は私の枷を解かれました。私はあなたに感謝の生贄を捧げ主の皆を呼ぶでしょう。ね
ねって何を言ってるのかさっぱりだ。
生贄だってのか。
The part Maria just read aloud was the vital part of the magic circle. And was saying that the benefit of this magic circle required sacrifices to be offered in exchange. So inside the storehouse where the magic circle had been drawn, the sacrifices had been offered. Looks like everyone else had slowly arrived at the same conclusion. Some were shocked, others spat out they're insane as they punched their knees. It was starting to become a seriously disturbing story. And we couldn't accept it nor understand it. I don't care what kind of magic circles or curses other people believe in. That's their right, and I won't pick a fight with them. But did they really kill Dad and the rest as sacrifices for some bullshit like that? I just couldn't stand that feeling. I'd rather still be disgusted over all the talk around the inheritance. As I started getting pissed off at the feeling between anger and sadness, I broke from the circle everyone was in and returned once again to the window. Something had gone insane since yesterday. That letter from the witch Beatrice that Maria had read aloud at last night's dinner. I feel like since that point this whole mansion and this whole island have begun to draw into some kind of peculiar world. That's right, when I think back on it, that letter was an invitation from the witch. The ruler of the nighttime island had invited us inhabitants of the day into another world. Phone and radio interrupted, and the island shut off by the typhoon. You could now call it another world cut off from the real one. Yes, on this island right now, it was perfectly normal for witches to send letters and for sacrifices to be offered to magic circles. So what will happen next? Some weird people wearing goat masks start doing the Bond Festival dance or something? Ah, it's no good. It's no good. I don't get it. The inside of my head's all screwed up. I don't even know what to think. Anger, sadness. The opposing emotions all swirl up together and they started to suck me in. Unable to resist, I could do nothing but cover my eyes with my hands and trust my mind and body to the spiral swallowing me. As I started losing heart, I began to recall a distant memory. It was from when I was very young. I'd unfortunately seen a scary occult movie on TV, and for a while I hadn't even been able to go to the bathroom by myself. That old bastard had given me an exaggerated laugh and said this.
なあ、バトラ。どうして悪魔だのオカルトだのってのをわざわざこうして映画にすると思う？ねえからだよ。そんな滑稽なもんは地球のどこにもねえのさ。ねえからわざわざ見たくて作るんだよ。だから俺はオカルト映画なんてちゃんちゃらおかしくて笑っちまうってんだ。俺に言わせりゃ悪魔やら妖怪やらより今年度の収支報告や機嫌を悪くした女房の方が1億倍も怖えってもんだ。さらに言うぜ。怖がるってのは心と生活にゆとりのある連中の娯楽的感情なのさ。暇でしょうがないから。連中は変わった感情で心を遊ばせたくて悪魔だのオカルト。
Seriously, why have I been acting so damn thick-headed? Totally taken in. To hell with that shit. This is the human world. I give a crap about witches, demons, magic circles, and sacrifices. The human who killed Dad and everyone else is still on this island. That's all there is, right? Next to start speaking, and my heart was curious on.
チェスや将棋ってね、終盤の終盤、詰めの最後の段階に入れば入るほど最善手は限られてくるのよ。だから自分が追い詰めている、あるいは追い詰められているというその時、両者の手は限りなく読みやすくなるのよ。つまり完全に追い詰められて打つ手なしって思ったその時こそ最も読みやすい瞬間なのよ。でも守勢に立った人間はどうしても考えが固くなって相手の手を読むことにまで考えが至らない。そういう時はね、チェス盤をひっくり返すの。
All my strength, I slapped my face with both hands. Now my eyes were truly open. You don't understand anything, you're completely cornered just like I am now. Is not the perfect time to flip over the chessboard? Let's put on the defensive, we couldn't even guess at the culprit's scheme. You flip it over and look at it the other way, just how far could you see? First off, the time the murders were committed by the culprit, they knew that the island was cut off by the typhoon. They should have understood that even if they carried out the murders, they wouldn't be able to get away until the next morning. In short, the culprit had begun without securing a way to escape. Furthermore, the bastard had even tossed the corpses in the storehouse while doing the courtesy of telling us they are here with that weird graffiti. In other words, since we could probably find the corpses sooner or later, they wanted to show us them. We'd all been dim and hadn't noticed the storage shed, perhaps the culprit's goal would not have been achieved. Think about it this way, that murdering maniac. Since the morning, he must have been watching over our every move with bated breath. After all, if we hadn't been so kind as to discover what was on the storehouse, all the hard work and preparation we had done last night would have just gone poof. What did the culprit want to make us feel by showing us the corpses in the storehouse? All 6 of the bodies had their faces noticeably destroyed. A grudge, a warning. The defacement of the bodies had occurred after death. But it hadn't been the means by which the culprit had murdered. It didn't mean anything to those who had been killed. It had meaning to those who discovered it. The culprit wanted them to show them to us. Look how brutally I killed them. Thinking this way, I really want to tell that asshole to stop taking me so lightly. We'll dance to that tune. If so, if I'm told, please be scared, I'm not just going to say, really? Sure thing. When someone tells the great Bushirmi of battle, our entrance this way, I'm the kind of guy who will want to start to sneak in through the window. Next thing that had me concerned was the attempt at a magic circle on the shutter. This is a genuine magic circle declared authentic by even Maria, who had demonstrated that her knowledge of the occult rivaled grandfather's. They must have drawn this thing in pitch black darkness while holding an umbrella in one hand. This had taken them a lot of time. It's a formidable amount of hard work and attention to detail. What purpose would it have been worth all of that effort? Something related to the occult happened in the mansion, most likely would automatically suspect the involvement of grandfather. Did they want us to make us think grandfather was involved? That was all they wanted. They could have just drawn any old scribble that looked like a magic circle. It wasn't like any of us amateurs could tell the difference between genuine and fake. However, this magic circle was genuine, and furthermore, it had even been written in Hebrew. This magic circle had a message that could only be understood by someone with knowledge of the occult. Messages are a form of communication. You send them and hope for a reaction from the other party. Reaction? For some reason, we couldn't find grandfather now. I don't know how grandfather could have managed to keep the magic circle on the shutter. Had he chosen to hide himself in reaction to that sign? No, it was a trap to make us suspect grandfather's involvement. We could read it either way. Damn, that's annoying. What kind of a reaction was the culprit hoping to get out of this by showing this imitation of the occult? Somehow, that felt like the culprit's weak point. The section of Beatrice's letter that Maria had read aloud during last night's dinner sprang to the back of my mind. Martha said, "I ask that you enjoy your battle of wits." Sounds like fun. This is a battle of wits between us and the witch. Which will be the first, us being swallowed up by your occult games? Or me revealing you for who you are? There's a whole day until the typhoon passes. Why not enjoy ourselves? And I think that is where we will call it for tonight.